Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Apologies guys, my voice is a little bit shot. I am getting better. I feel much better today. Thank you all for your kind words. I appreciate it. My voice still sounds pretty bad though, so no worries. We'll go ahead and try and get through what we can here. Today I've got the Wood Elves. We're going to be fighting up against the Skaven in a beautiful map that I assume is on Atholloran, judging from the High Elf buildings over there. Or sorry, not Atholloran, Ulthuan. These guys are from Atholloran. We've got a Glady here on a horse, Brave on a Threma. This is a pretty standard build of what you guys have seen me bring before, but I did want to point out a few things that have changed in the Tomb King's patch. Number one, and this is something that I myself had forgotten going into this battle, is that Starfire Shafts and Hagbane Tips and many other variants of Wood Elf missile units don't do magic damage, so they only do fire damage. At least these ones, the Hagbane Tips, for example, only do poison, and so on. I believe the Swift Shiver Shards still do magic damage, as well as the Glady herself still has a magic damage as well. So just something to be aware of. They're not going to be as effective against things like Plague Monks and Gutter Runners, things like that. We've got 4 Starfire Shafts, though, with 4 Tonal Guards in front, 2 War Dancers with swords, backed up by a Branch Wraith in the center, with a Sword Dancer on each flank protecting. You've also got the Glady, a unit of Glade Riders with Hagbane Tips here, and a single Sister of Thorn out on the far side. Now, Sisters of Thorn is a unit that got buffed once again in Tomb Kings. They did get a little bit more expensive, but they do have more unit models now. Coming in at 36 unit models, they do a considerable amount of damage, especially to low armor targets. They have decent combat stats, also 50% physical resistance, means they're pretty decent in hit and run style attacks in melee. And yeah, they're going to be poking away early on at these Rat Ogres here. For my opponent, he's got a pretty heavy Rat Ogre rush build. 4 Rat Ogres with a front line of Clan Rats with shields to help soak up some missile fire. We've got a couple of Plague Monks mixed in as well. Plenty of ranged units with several Skaven Slave Slingers, looks like 4, which can generate excellent value against the Wood Elves. Really like that pick. We've got some Skaven Slave Spears as well, just to kind of tie things up out and around the flanks. A couple of Gutter Runners with poison as well. Very strong picks. He's got a Bonebreaker Warlord with a Warlock Engineer. No Lore of Plague this time, so just the Warlock. He's got the -5 melee attack AoE effect item, which is very good. He's also got Rally, Verminous Valor, and Deadly Onslaught. We've also got a Warlock Engineer. He's carrying Howling Warp Gale. Actually, no, Death Frenzy. Interesting. I haven't actually seen anyone use Death Frenzy in a while, so this should be interesting. It's also got Warp Lightning, and yeah, some other abilities. What is this one here? Shadow Magnet Trinket. Okay, so it gives +12 missile parry to all units with shields nearby. Very interesting. Did not know about that item, or at least I'd never seen it in action. He's also got a Plague Claw Catapult in the rear. Some of the Rat Ogres are hanging around in defensive positions in case of Wild Riders or Sisters of Thorn, which is very smart. Let's go ahead and kick things into full gear. As my opponent comes into rage, we're going to open up shots, and this is where I wasn't remembering that the Glade Guards unfortunately no longer do magic damage. They're not going to be doing the most damage here to these Plague Monks, unfortunately, at least not as much as I had hoped. And I was like, why aren't they doing that much damage? And that's the reason why. We did catch this one unit of Rat Ogres with the Brave on a Threma, though. Brave on a Threma also got changed. So it has a little bit shorter cast range. It only has 3 max charges throughout the whole battle, so you have to pick and choose when you're going to use them. Unfortunately, I blundered my Glade Riders into these Rat Ogres, trying to go after the Plague Claw Catapult over here. The Sisters of Thorn likewise are doing a little bit of a secret agent mission over here, getting in on this Plague Claw Catapult. Very good stuff. And yeah, you can see very well placed Warp Lightning Cannon by my opponent there. We did a little bit of a bait and switch tactic where he ran in with his Rat Ogre Bonebreaker Warlord straight in onto my Dryad, or my Branch Wraith rather, which is a pretty good play. But I just hard switched. I cheated out with the War Dancers out into the infantry engagement and just pulled in the 2 Spear Dancers. They're going to be now inundating on this Warlord here, and yeah, it should be pretty good. So let's go ahead and just see how things get underway here. You can see the Rat Ogres being tied up on this flank very nicely by the Eternal Guards. Those catapults, though, are doing a lot of work against my Glade Guards. Between that and the Warp Lightning, Glade Guards on this side have pretty much been rendered combat ineffective. A beautiful Penumbral Pendulum going down, just shredding the line of the Rats. followed up by an immediate Earthblood, is going to break this flank melee-wise pretty much in my favor. You can see that unit of Plague Monks and those Skaven Slave Spears being routed off by that absolutely brutal Penumbral Pendulum there. And yeah, the Rat Ogre's also being caught up on Eternal Guards is ideal for me. This Warlord has not been able to spring free of the Spear Dancers here, and they are going to be routing him off. Unfortunately, he does have the speed to probably get away here, but it is fortunate that we're able to rout him off so early on in the battle. You can see the Plague Claw Catapult has now turned its attention to the Starfire Shafts over here. We just have not been able to kill it with the Sisters of the Thorn, despite everything. We've been having to kite away and cycle back in because of these Rat Ogres. We're currently in melee after having cycled out and cycled back in. You can see we're doing quite a bit of damage to these Rat Ogres. We also dropped the Curse of Anre here just to nerf their melee stats. They weren't doing as much damage here. We haven't been able to actually take the Plague Claw Catapult offline, which is very unfortunate. That being said, you can see we've won the infantry engagement pretty heavily. We're going to have War Dancers and Eternal Guards just pushing all across the line here. This is a very dangerous situation to be in, though. You can see this balance of power is still very even. Despite these only being slaves, they can still do a substantial amount of damage with sheer volume of fire here, especially if they turn and start to focus individual units. You can see we're charging downhill with the Sisters of Thorn, just trying to tie up this big blob of Skaven Slave Slingers at this point. These Sisters of Thorn are going to rack up a lot of kills here. They're already up to triple bronze chevron. Granted, they did start with the double bronze, but they managed to gain one more chevron through combat here. You can see the Eternal Guards also pushing away some Plague Monks, who have likewise pushed away the War Dancers there. The Bonebreaker unfortunately did come back from rallying on the far side, got away from my forces, but we're going to be getting these regrouped Glade Guard to immediately start firing in their armor-piercing missiles there. This Branch Wraith is fighting against the Warlock Engineer, which is a pretty interesting engagement in terms of casters. The Warlock Engineer does have armor piercing. He doesn't have the best combat stats. The Branch Wraith actually has significantly better combat stats, but the Warlock Engineer also doesn't have a whole lot of armor either, which means the Branch Wraith's non-armor piercing attacks are going to be pretty decent there. So I'd imagine that fight would be more or less a wash. But it's kind of just the haggard infantry casters smacking each other around. But yeah, you can see Bonebreakers charging through the center of those that had been held in reserve. One has been routed off by the Sisters of Thorn, I believe. We finally got these War Dancers back onto the catapult and took it off commission. And the infantry are just continuing to try and push these skirmishers out and away from the battle as we kind of clean things up in the periphery. This is a phase of the battle where both the Wood Elves and the Skaven are very dangerous. When the battlefield gets kind of discombobulated and you have these isolated engagements taking place all over the battlefield, both factions can potentially take advantage. You can see I'm able to collapse a few of his units of infantry here. The Rat Ogres as well also being routed off. The Bonebreaker Warlord did either get killed or routed off the side. I'm not 100% sure. I don't see his corpse here anyways, so he must have gotten away. But yeah, Rat Ogres on this side not being microed, unfortunately. These Rat Ogres are desperately needed in the fight here. They're the ones that chased off the Glade Riders earlier with the Hagbane tips. Yeah, you can see Gut Runners with poison here, just kind of chilling, out of ammo, having expended a lot of their ammo and probably got some decent work done. 51 kills, not quite a chevron yet, but pretty close. You can see the Skaven Slaves Slingers as well. All the damage that they can do to these Eternal Guards is basically for free, considering how cheap they are. So we're just going to be kind of trying to tie things up at this point. You can see the balance of power slightly in my favor. So we do have a few isolated engagements out on the periphery. We've got some Glade Guards fighting Clan Rats way out here in the boonies. And the Warlock Engineer is also back from routing, which is largely why the Skaven leadership is still holding up at this point. But yeah, you can see these Eternal Guards are going to get in a rough situation where they're surrounded by multiple missile units firing in from multiple angles. They are going to take quite a bit of damage here. But yeah, we're just cleaning up all the units we can. There's some Clan Rats with shields here getting cleaned up by the Sisters of Thorn and the Glady, who are very, very cool looking units. Both the Sisters of Thorn are one of my favorite units. They're awesome with their javelins and everything, firing into this somewhat healthy unit of Rat Ogres. I say somewhat healthy. They're actually few unit models, another Penumbral Pendulum going down there. Not a ton of damage, but it was able to do a little bit against those Skaven Slave Slingers. We're also going to be dropping another Earthblood here just to keep these War Dancers fighting at full strength and to help mitigate some of that missile fire they're going to be taking from these low-tier troops. Meanwhile, Sisters of Thorn are going to be charging straight into these Rat Ogres. And this is what I was saying with that 50% physical resistance. These gals are great at hit and run tactics. They also do a lot of damage, especially to low armor targets. You can see the Rat Ogres taking a ton of burst damage there from that charge from the Sisters of Thorn. They're taking relatively little damage in return, although it is probably going to be time to pull away relatively shortly, just staying in there a little bit long with that Shield of Thorns to give them that extra weapon damage and some missile resistance to help mitigate some of that Skaven Slave Slinger fire. The Glady is also going to be charging in here, having expended all of her ammunition and putting down a Rat Ogre nonetheless, quite impressively, might I add. She's a pretty good combatant in her own right. You can see Warp Lightning Cannons going off. That pesky Warlock Engineer is still hanging around, but we're going to be getting the Branch Wraith to go deal with him very shortly. The Gutter Runners, out of ammunition, are actually going to be a bit of a challenge for the low health War Dancers. They do still have much better combat stats, but the poison and the fact that they're very tired versus the winded of the Gutter Runners means the Gutter Runners are probably going to do pretty decently well here, and it does look like a Death Frenzy going down as well. So those Gutter Runners are suddenly going to get juiced in terms of stats and get a lot more weapon damage, so they should be able to actually beat those War Dancers. Very nice use of that Death Frenzy there in this late game to try and come back. So Warlock Engineer has actually been a pretty clutch player this game, dropping another really nicely timed Warp Lightning right on those War Dancers. Yeah, some very nice play by my opponent from that Warlock Engineer there, but it's just not going to be enough in this late game scenario, unfortunately. I've got plenty of Glade Guards rallied here with plenty of ammunition left. We're going to be able to shoot down these Gut Runners, although they do have physical resistance and my missiles no longer do magic damage. Still, just the pure volume of fire here should be able to put these guys down, and as soon as we deal with this Warlock Engineer, army losses should trigger. So you can see the Rat Ogres have rallied here, going to be attacking the Glady, but honestly, she has the speed to just kind of get out of here. And man, somebody just got punted. Was that a Skaven Slave? Not really sure, but yeah, beautiful cinematic shots as another Warp Lightning's going off, narrowly missing those Glade Guards, but you can see the Warlock Engineer's running for his life through the woods here, but little does he know that's the Branch Wraith's favorite territory. Going to be getting into these Glade Guards, probably killing a few of them, no doubt. Yeah, it looks like he chopped that dude's arm off. But yeah, the Glady's going to come in with the Branch Wraith buddy and put him out of his misery. So very well played to my opponent. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. Once again, sorry for my voice. Honestly, guys, it's worse than it sounds at this point. I don't feel too bad, but my voice sounds pretty bad, so I apologize about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that. Man, that Branch Wraith with that Penumbral Pendulum in the front line definitely helped swing this battle in my favor. You know, that front line engagement could have definitely turned against me if those Rat Ogres had showed up and come in and done a ton of shock damage. That Penumbral Pendulum allowed me to clean it up relatively quickly to where we were forward and had pretty much cleaned up the infantry engagement by the time the Rat Ogres got in there. So very well played there. War Dancers also being very clutch, 116 and 85 kills on these guys. Spear Dancers dealt with the Warlord very effectively, and yeah, Glade Guards didn't do as much as they normally would because of nerfs, but Sisters of Thorn as well. It's worth noting, 129 kills, managed to go from double bronze to single silver chevrons over the course of the battle, so these guys are absolutely brutal. And in fact, in most situations, let's go ahead and take a look here, and we can kind of compare some things. And honestly, in most situations, I prefer Sisters of Thorn to Wild Riders. That's just me. Call me a little crazy, but let's go ahead and take a look why, and I'll tell you guys. So if we come down here to the Wood Elves, we can grab some Sisters of Thorn, and let's grab some Wild Riders. So you can see they're only 50 apart in terms of cost. Obviously, the Wild Riders have a much better charge bonus and weapon strength. However, their combat stats, their raw combat stats, are actually worse for the non-shielded version. And let's see, yeah, basically, yeah, slightly worse for the shielded version as well in terms of their melee attack and defense. Sisters of Thorn have really nice combat stats. They do have much less charge bonus and weapon strength, which is significant, don't get me wrong. But the fact is they pick up that missile attack. They do have less unit models by 9. They have 9 less unit models. But in return, you pick up that massive missile attack with 18 volleys of pretty heavy damage javelins, as well as the 2 buff spells. 3 uses of Shield of Thorns and 2 uses of Curse of Onrahair are both incredibly useful, which is why in pretty much every situation, for me personally, I'd rather take Sisters of Thorn than Wild Riders. They're the same speed, you know, better leadership, in fact, less armor, but still, I mean, with the utility that you have between the javelins and the buffs and the debuffs, you can kite away enemy cavalry, enemy heavy cavalry, and just beat them down with the javelins and the debuffs. You know, with lighter armor troops, you can really do some damage with the javelins and do quick, you know, hit and run charges. Great at cleaning up chaff units, great at cleaning up elites. Honestly, Sisters of Thorn are one of my favorite units in the game right now. I am going to touch on Way Watchers in a bit. They're a little bit overpowered right now, which is why you guys probably won't see me bring them too often. I feel they're a little bit too good for what they're supposed to be doing, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.